Hello everyone. Welcome to the podcast, where everything is explored in an entirely new way. Join me as we dive into an exciting world where each video brings unforgettable knowledge and experiences. And I have a question for you. Have you ever trusted someone completely in a relationship, only to realize that it was all just a facade? That's exactly my story when my fiancée suddenly decided to take a break and travel around Europe with friends, right before our wedding day. And then, I did something no one expected. I called off the wedding. Before we jump into the story, grab yourself a nice cup of tea, relax, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss any exciting videos on this channel. Now, let's get into the story. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the suburban neighborhood, the protagonist sat on the edge of his bed, lost in thought. It had been 5 years since he first met Sarah, a whirlwind romance that had blossomed into a 3-year engagement. Their wedding date was approaching, an event that should have been filled with excitement and anticipation. Instead, a gnawing feeling of unease settled in his stomach. He remembered the countless hours they spent planning the perfect ceremony, envisioning their future together. But lately, something felt off. In the quiet moments of reflection, he recalled their shared dreams. A cozy home filled with laughter, family dinners, and lazy Sundays spent in each other's arms. Yet, as the wedding day loomed closer, the spark that once ignited their love began to dim. The tension between them had grown palpable, buried beneath the surface of their smiles and laughter. It was as if they were two actors playing a part in a story that had lost its meaning. The air was thick with unspoken words. And just when he thought they could push through, Sarah announced her plans to travel to Europe with her college friends. Initially, he supported her decision, believing a little time apart might help them reconnect. But as they stood together in the bustling airport, the weight of her casual remark struck him like a thunderbolt. Maybe we should take a break. The words echoed in his mind, leaving him breathless and confused. How could she suggest a break just days before their wedding? In that instant, he felt a fracture in their relationship, a crack that threatened to widen with every passing moment. As he watched her walk through security, a pit formed in his stomach, foreboding what lay ahead. Little did he know, this would mark the beginning of a tumultuous journey filled with heartache, confusion, and ultimately, a fight for self-respect. Sarah's departure for Europe was a bittersweet moment, filled with conflicting emotions. The protagonist stood at the airport, enveloped in the familiar hum of travel, where families reunited and lovers parted. The atmosphere should have been charged with excitement, but for him, a sense of dread loomed over the scene. As he watched Sarah smile and wave, the knot in his stomach tightened, leaving him restless. The trip was meant to be a celebration of her freedom, a chance to reconnect with old friends and explore new horizons. He thought this adventure might even bring them closer together, allowing them to return refreshed and ready to embark on their new life as a married couple. However, as she checked in at the gate, she casually mentioned the need for a break. The words hung in the air, heavy and unexpected, striking him like a blow to the chest. "Maybe we should take a break," she said, her tone light, as if discussing the weather. The protagonist's heart sank at her offhand suggestion. How could she say that just days before their wedding? The warmth of the airport melted away, replaced by a chilling uncertainty. He felt as if the ground had shifted beneath him, throwing his world into chaos. "Are you serious?" he managed to ask, his voice barely above a whisper, laced with disbelief. Sarah shrugged, a vague smile on her lips, seemingly unconcerned about the gravity of her words. "I just think we could use some space to clear our heads. You know, just for a bit." Staring at her, he struggled to comprehend the implications of her statement. Was this really happening? Did she truly believe a break was what they needed? He wanted to argue, to plead with her to reconsider, but the shock rendered him speechless. As the final boarding call rang out, she leaned in, planting a quick kiss on his cheek. "I'll text you when I land," she said, her casual demeanor only deepening his confusion. With that, she disappeared beyond the gate, and he stood there, rooted in place, staring at the empty space where she had just been. The reality of the situation began to sink in as he reached for his phone to text her, but to his horror, he found himself blocked on all communication platforms. Panic surged through him. How could she do this? Feeling a wave of anger and betrayal wash over him, he paced the terminal, replaying their last conversation in his mind. The weight of her decision pressed down on him, and he knew he had to take control of the situation. That night, he made a firm decision: he would cancel the wedding. All the plans, the dreams, the future they had envisioned together felt like a distant mirage, slipping away before his eyes. The choice was empowering, a stand against the turmoil Sarah's words had inflicted upon him. After Sarah's departure, the protagonist was left in a state of confusion and anger. The bright lights of the airport faded into the background as he wrestled with the realization that she had effectively cut him off. Every attempt he made to reach her resulted in silence, each unanswered call and text message only amplifying his growing frustration. He felt trapped in a whirlwind of emotions, oscillating between disbelief and rage. How could she take such a drastic step so close to their wedding? As days turned into weeks, the protagonist found himself pacing their shared apartment, each corner filled with remnants of their plans, wedding dresses hanging in the closet, invitations waiting to be sent, and photos from happier times scattered on the walls. He felt suffocated by the memories, reminders of a life that now seemed shattered. With each tick of the clock, his resolve hardened. He knew he couldn't remain passive while Sarah was off enjoying her life without him. In a moment of empowerment, he made the decision to cancel the wedding and all related arrangements. It felt liberating to take charge of his own destiny, to reclaim his narrative after feeling so helpless. As he sat down to draft a message to their friends and family, he felt a surge of adrenaline course through him. He composed a straightforward note announcing the cancellation of the wedding and their relationship, his heart racing with both fear and exhilaration. It was time to let the world know he was done waiting for Sarah to return. When he hit send, a wave of relief washed over him. He imagined the reactions of their loved ones: some would be shocked, others supportive. He was prepared for the backlash, ready to defend his decision against any dissenters. However, the first response he received was a flood of mixed emotions. Friends quickly responded, expressing disbelief and concern for Sarah. Some voiced their disappointment, while others questioned his judgment, urging him to reconsider. Yet, he remained steadfast. As the notifications continued to pop up on his phone, he felt a sense of clarity. His friends might not understand the depths of Sarah's actions, but he did. He knew he deserved better than to be left in the dark, wondering about his future. Despite the pressure to rethink his decision, he felt a newfound strength rising within him. Days later, the tension escalated when Sarah's attempts to justify her actions began pouring in through mutual friends and family. She painted herself as the victim, claiming the stress of the wedding had overwhelmed her. Each time her name was mentioned, he felt the anger bubbling to the surface. The protagonist couldn't believe how effortlessly she shifted blame onto him while conveniently neglecting her role in their unraveling relationship. The climax arrived unexpectedly, 6 weeks after Sarah's departure, when the protagonist's phone rang late one evening. He glanced at the screen, and his heart raced. It was Sarah. Against his better judgment, he answered, expecting some semblance of clarity or closure. Instead, her voice flowed through the speaker, bright and casual, as if nothing had changed. "Hey! I'm back," she chirped, excitement lacing her tone. "I thought we could catch up. Everything is fine now, right?" The protagonist felt a surge of frustration wash over him. Fine? How could she possibly think everything was fine? The weight of her absence pressed heavily on his chest, and he struggled to contain his emotions. "No, Sarah, everything is not fine. You just left without a word and then blocked me. What do you expect?" She laughed lightly, brushing off his anger. "Come on, it was just a break. I needed some time to think. But I've missed you. Let's just forget about all that and start fresh." His resolve hardened in that moment. He could not let her manipulate the narrative any longer. "I'm not interested in starting fresh," he said firmly, his voice steady. "You don't get to waltz back into my life after leaving me hanging. I've already canceled the wedding, and I'm done with this relationship." Silence enveloped the call, the weight of his words settling heavily between them. Sarah's carefree demeanor shattered, replaced by a mix of disbelief and indignation. "You can't be serious," she exclaimed, her voice rising in pitch. "This is just a temporary setback. We can work through this." "No," he replied, feeling liberated by his stance. "You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. I deserve better than being left in the dark while you're off enjoying your life." With that, he hung up, feeling a mix of triumph and relief. The decision to end things publicly had been empowering, but the fallout was still yet to come. It didn't take long for the news to spread among friends and family. He posted an announcement in their group chat, formally ending the engagement in their relationship. The reactions were swift and varied. Some friends expressed shock and concern for Sarah, while others rallied behind him, recognizing the pain he had endured. If you think the story is good, leave a comment with the number 1, and if not, please subscribe to the channel. If the video is helpful to you, don't forget to hit the like button. But the real test came when Sarah's friends and family reached out to advocate for her, trying to sway him back into her arms. They called, texted, and even confronted him in person, attempting to guilt him into reconsidering. He felt the pressure building, yet he remained resolute. The tide of emotions swirling around him only reinforced his conviction that he had made the right choice. Sarah's attempts to play the victim only served to further highlight her manipulation. She hadn't changed, and he realized he needed to stand firm against the tide of guilt and pressure coming from her side. With each argument, he felt stronger in his decision, ready to face whatever backlash awaited him. In the days that followed his decisive break with Sarah, the fallout began to take shape, weaving through the fabric of his life like a dark thread. Sarah, unaccustomed to being on the receiving end of rejection, mounted a defense. She reached out to mutual friends and family, attempting to justify her actions and paint herself as the victim of an unreasonable partner. She claimed the stress of the wedding had been too much for her, spinning a narrative that conveniently left out her choices and their consequences. The protagonist found himself inundated with calls and messages from those who had once stood by him. Friends who had supported him through thick and thin now expressed concern for Sarah. "You have to understand how much pressure she was under," one friend implored, clearly influenced by Sarah's perspective. "She just needed a break, man. You might be overreacting." Frustration bubbled within him. How could they not see the truth? He felt his defenses rising, ready to counter their arguments. "She didn't just need a break, she walked away from our life together. I won't apologize for standing up for myself," he replied, his voice steady but laced with tension. Yet, with every call he received advocating for Sarah, his resolve was tested. Friends seemed more willing to excuse her actions than to validate his pain. The protagonist felt increasingly isolated as he tried to maintain his stance, feeling as if the world was pushing him to forgive and forget. He found solace in a few loyal allies who respected his decision and reminded him that he deserved better than the uncertainty Sarah had brought into his life. As the situation escalated, Sarah's emotional outbursts grew more frequent. She flooded the group chat with messages, attempting to elicit sympathy from friends. "You don't understand what I was going through," she lamented. "I just needed to figure things out." The protagonist, tired of the victim narrative, decided to speak up. He laid out the facts clearly, detailing how her actions had hurt him and dismantled the life they had planned together. "I deserve respect," he wrote in the chat. "What you did was disrespectful, and I won't accept that." His response ignited a flurry of reactions, some supportive, others critical. Sarah's friends rallied to her side, attacking him for his supposed insensitivity. Yet he stood firm, determined to reclaim his narrative. Feeling emboldened by his decision to take control, he began to cut ties with those who sided with Sarah. Blocking friends who insisted on advocating for her, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He realized that he needed to prioritize his own emotional well-being, breaking free from the chaos that had engulfed his life. The storm was far from over, but he was resolute. He had chosen his path, and he would not be swayed by those who could not understand his pain. As the conflict escalated, the protagonist found himself engulfed in a whirlwind of emotions, battling the repercussions of his decision to end the engagement. Sarah's friends and family were relentless, bombarding him with calls, messages, and pleas to reconsider. They painted him as the villain in the story, manipulating the narrative to cast doubt on his choices. "You can't just throw everything away," one of her closest friends insisted. "You need to understand what she was going through." Each conversation only fueled his anger. How could they fail to see the truth? He felt increasingly overwhelmed by the pressure to conform to their expectations, to relent and go back to Sarah, but he remained steadfast in his resolve. He refused to allow their emotional turmoil to sway him. Meanwhile, Sarah escalated her tactics, reaching out to his family members in a desperate bid for sympathy. She claimed that he had overreacted and that he needed to come to his senses. The protagonist's heart sank when his mother called him, her voice filled with concern. "Honey, you should really think about this. She seems so lost and confused. Maybe you could just talk it out?" The protagonist clenched his fists, frustration boiling beneath the surface. "Mom, you don't understand. This isn't just about her feeling overwhelmed. She left me without any warning. I deserve better than this." He felt a wave of isolation wash over him, realizing that even those who loved him were beginning to question his decisions. As the days turned into a blur of heated discussions, Sarah's manipulation became more apparent. She used mutual friends to rally support, creating a narrative that framed her as the one in distress while he was painted as heartless. It stung deeply to hear whispers of doubt about his character, particularly from those he once considered close. In the group chat, Sarah's constant justifications escalated tensions further. "I just wanted to figure things out, and now I'm being treated like the bad guy," she lamented, her tone dripping with victimhood. The protagonist felt anger bubble up again. He refused to be painted as the antagonist in her story, and it fueled his determination to set the record straight. "Sarah, your actions have consequences," he replied, the words firm and resolute. "You made your choices, and I'm not going to apologize for protecting myself." His statement hung in the air, igniting a barrage of responses from her supporters. Friends who had previously been neutral now took sides, further fracturing the group. The protagonist felt increasingly cornered, but the fire within him refused to extinguish. He had made his choice, and he knew he had to remain strong against the tide of guilt and manipulation that threatened to pull him back into Sarah's world. The resolution of the conflict came to a head when Sarah's mother called him, her tone dripping with urgency and guilt. "You need to give Sarah another chance," she insisted, her voice trembling. "She's been through so much. You're breaking her heart." The protagonist felt the familiar stirrings of anger and frustration, but he forced himself to remain calm. "I can't keep ignoring what she did to me, and I won't feel guilty for protecting myself," he replied, his voice steady. "She left without a word, and I won't just pretend it didn't happen." The conversation escalated as Sarah's mother continued to push, trying to guilt him into reconsidering. "But she loves you. You can't throw that away. Think of all the time you've spent together." He took a deep breath, trying to maintain his composure. "Love isn't enough when there's no respect. I can't just forget how she treated me. I've moved on, and I'm not going back." After ending the call, he felt a sense of clarity wash over him. Each attempt from Sarah's family to mediate only strengthened his resolve. It became increasingly clear that to find peace, he needed to cut ties with everyone associated with Sarah. He started blocking her family and friends from his phone and social media, reclaiming his personal space. Days turned into a quiet reflection period. The noise surrounding him began to fade as he took stock of what had happened. He spent time focusing on his own needs, rediscovering interests he had sidelined during the chaos of planning the wedding. He took long walks, reconnected with friends who supported him, and even started journaling his thoughts, pouring out the emotions he had bottled up for too long. One evening, he sat down and wrote a final message to the group chat, addressing everyone who had sided with Sarah. "I appreciate those who have supported me, but I can't continue to engage in this cycle. It's time for me to move on completely. As he hit send, a sense of finality washed over him. The decision felt liberating, a weight lifted from his shoulders. He knew that cutting ties meant some friendships would likely suffer, but he had come to understand the importance of self-respect and boundaries. Soon after, Sarah sent a series of frantic messages, begging him to reconsider and blaming him for not understanding her struggles. But he remained resolute, replying only once to tell her that he was moving on and demanding the return of the apartment key. He needed closure, a definitive end to the tumultuous chapter they had shared. With each passing day, the pain began to fade, replaced by a renewed sense of freedom. He took further steps to ensure his safety and peace of mind, changing the locks on his apartment and considering a restraining order if her behavior escalated. As he moved forward, he reflected on the lessons learned about boundaries, trust, and self-respect. The journey had been painful, but it had also been transformative. The protagonist embraced the future, feeling liberated and determined to carve out a new path for himself, finally free from the shadows of his past with Sarah. The final confrontation came unexpectedly in the form of a lengthy letter from Sarah. It arrived one afternoon, slipped under his apartment door like a haunting echo of their past. As he picked it up, a rush of emotions flooded through him, anger, sadness, and a flicker of nostalgia. He hesitated for a moment before opening it, bracing himself for what was sure to be a tumultuous read. In her letter, Sarah expressed deep regret for her actions, claiming she had finally come to terms with her mistakes. She proposed meeting to talk things over and suggested couples counseling, assuming he would be eager to reconcile. Her words dripped with a mixture of desperation and hope, painting a picture of a woman who had suddenly recognized the value of what they had shared. As he read her words, a storm of conflicting emotions raged within him. Part of him wanted to believe in her transformation, to think that she genuinely sought to make amends. But the memories of her abandonment and the chaos that had followed were still fresh in his mind, preventing him from seeing past her pleas. He set the letter down, taking a moment to collect his thoughts. It was clear that she was trying to manipulate him once again, appealing to his emotions in a bid to regain control over the situation. He thought about the times he had let her back in after similar promises, only to be disappointed again. With renewed clarity, he picked up his phone and composed a response. "Sarah, I appreciate your letter, but I need to be clear. I'm moving on. I won't be meeting for counseling or any discussions about resuming our relationship." His fingers hovered over the screen for a moment, and he added, "Also, I want the apartment key back. I need closure, and it's time for us both to fully move forward." He hit send, feeling a mix of relief and empowerment. No sooner had he sent the message than his phone buzzed with a notification. It was Sarah, responding almost immediately. Her tone shifted dramatically from regret to anger, her words laced with disbelief. "You think you can just throw me away? After everything we shared? You don't mean this." He felt his heart race as he read her words. He had anticipated her reaction, but seeing it laid out in front of him was a stark reminder of how manipulative she could be. "I do mean it, Sarah. I'm taking back my life, and that means leaving you behind," he replied, his voice steady. In that moment, he realized the confrontation was not just about Sarah but about reclaiming his power and establishing his boundaries. The emotional grip she had held over him was finally loosening, and he felt lighter with each word he typed. As he blocked her number for good, a wave of freedom washed over him. The finality of the confrontation marked a turning point in his journey, a decisive step towards healing and self-discovery. He understood now that moving on wasn't just a choice, it was a necessity. And as he reflected on what lay ahead, he felt a sense of liberation, finally free from the turmoil that had defined his past with Sarah. In the aftermath of the final confrontation, the protagonist found himself in a state of reflection, contemplating the tumultuous journey that had led him to this point. With Sarah no longer a presence in his life, he took deliberate steps to ensure his safety and emotional well-being. Changing the locks on his apartment was a symbolic act, marking the closing of a door that had long been ajar, filled with uncertainty and pain. As the weeks passed, he began to reclaim his identity, free from the shadows of the past. he immersed himself in activities he had once loved but had neglected during his relationship with Sarah. Weekends were spent hiking the local trails, rediscovering the joy of solitude amidst nature. Each step he took felt like a step away from the heartache, allowing him to breathe easier and embrace the world around him. The lessons learned during this painful experience echoed in his mind. He realized the importance of boundaries, the need for trust in a relationship, and the necessity of self-respect. No longer would he allow someone else's actions to dictate his emotions or undermine his worth. The journey had been painful, but it had also instilled in him a newfound strength and resilience. In quiet moments, he reflected on the friendship and love he once shared with Sarah, acknowledging the happy memories while refusing to let them overshadow the truth of her betrayal. The contrast was stark. What had once been a source of joy had turned into a painful reminder of how quickly things could change. He felt grateful for the lessons, recognizing that they had shaped him into someone stronger and more self-aware. As he moved forward, he focused on building a future that aligned with his values and desires. He started attending workshops and seminars that sparked his interest, connecting with like-minded individuals who shared his passion for personal growth. Each new connection felt like a thread weaving into the fabric of a brighter, more fulfilling life. The emotional turmoil that had consumed him gradually gave way to a sense of liberation. He no longer felt haunted by what could have been. Instead, he embraced the possibilities that lay ahead. The protagonist had emerged from the ashes of his past, ready to embrace the future with open arms. In the end, he felt liberated, not just from Sarah but from the confines of self-doubt and insecurity that had plagued him for too long. The path to healing was not a straight line, but with every step forward, he grew more confident in his ability to navigate life on his terms. As he closed this chapter, he felt a renewed sense of hope for the future, ready to move forward without Sarah, finally free to become the person he was always meant to be. If you think the story is good, leave a comment with the number 1, and if not, please subscribe to the channel. If the video is helpful to you, don't forget to hit the like button.